which looks at how individuals reflexively behave in a space and what that factor means for how we create products to market in a given space. So the psychology of communication. And so to begin with, I'd like you to think about a situation that was very familiar until recently. If, say, you went to a restaurant. Whenever you walked into a restaurant, even though you'd never been there before, the moment you recognized where you were, a strange series of reflexive things happened. In many cases, we know when we walk into a restaurant to look for a specific kind of marker or sign that tells us what the seating policy for the restaurant is. Do we wait for someone to tell us where to sit, or may we sit down on our own? But most of the time, we enter this space and we stop and look for that marker. If we see a marker that says something like, please wait to be seated, then we wait for someone to appear, a very specific individual. And strangely, we know who we are looking for, and we know who we are waiting for. We know what they should look like. And we wait for that person to appear and say a very standard thing, something like, would you like to be seated? Can I help you? I'd like to seat you. But we do this subconsciously without realizing it, even though we've never been to a place before or told the rules of how to behave. The moment we see this person who we've never met, we know exactly how they're going to interact with us. We know exactly what they're going to say to us. We know exactly what they will have with them. And we know exactly how they're going to move through that space or what they'll do. They'll take us to our table and help us be seated. Yet they can do this without explanation. We simply know it will happen, and we do it without thought. What gets even more interesting when you think about it is when you get to this place you've never been before, and you're engaging in an activity you've never done before, when you get to this place you've never been before and engage in an activity you've never done before, you know what will be there waiting for you.
Kirk,
You know when you, yeah.
Kirk, excuse me. Ragazzi, per favore, potete spegnere i microfoni? Perché c'è un rumore di fondo che penso sentiate tutti. Fate attenzione a questa cosa, per favore. Ok? Francesca Romana, qualcosa, per favore.
Sì, professore, mi scusi.
Okay, excuse me, Kirk.
No worries. Thank you. But one of the strange things about going to a restaurant when you know that where you are is you don't have to bring like plates or forks or spoons or knives. You don't have to bring menus. You know those things will be provided for you. But when you think about it, you've never been here before. How do you know those things will be there for you? You've never had to communicate with that individual. How do you know they'll provide them? It's a very strange series of assumptions that we don't even question. We simply know their reality. We also know when we get to a restaurant, certain people are going to do specific things for us. We don't have to be told this. We know that there's going to be waiters or waitresses or wait staff there. And in many cases, we know how to identify them by certain uniforms. We expect these things without having to be told. We know that when those people take our order, they'll have specific tools available. They'll provide us with menus. We don't need to bring them. We don't even have to ask for them. They will provide them. We also know that when we give them an order, they will have with them a pen and a pad to write down our order or record it. In fact, for most of us, if we go to a restaurant and we place an order and the waiter or waitress does not have a pen or paper to write it down, we become very nervous. And often we doubt the order that we receive in the end and quite often check it multiple times to make sure it's correct. Yet there's no logical reason for us to make these assumptions. We've had no explanation of this. We've never been to this place before, yet we know how to behave. What gets equally interesting is without having to provide a series of communications with these people, wait staff, we know exactly what they're going to do. They're responsible for bringing our meal to us. We don't have to clarify that. We just know. And they don't have to explain it. We simply assume. We also know that if we need more plates or knives or forks, we can ask them and they will provide them. And if we wish to see the menu again, we know we can do so anytime. We simply have to ask for it. Yet none of this information is written down for us to read whenever we go to a restaurant. We can go to a restaurant anywhere in the world and expect the same things to happen. Yet we've never been there before. How is this possible to know these things take place? We also know that at the end of the meal, a strange process occurs. The wait person will bring us our bill. We don't have to ask for it in many cases. We know that they will provide it. We also know that of all the things we are expected to do, we must bring one specific thing to this event, and that's the money we use to pay for the bill. Everything else we can assume is there, but we know going in that we're going to have to pay for this service, for the thing that we've just purchased. But we don't need to be told that. It's an assumption. Now, as odd as this sounds for restaurants, think about a classroom, which many of us were in prior to COVID-19. Whenever you walked into a classroom, no one needed to explain to you what to do, how to behave, how to act. You walked in, you knew exactly where you were going to sit. You knew exactly how you were going to organize yourselves. You didn't need direct explanation of that. You also knew that when you went to a classroom, you needed to bring certain things with you. They were expected, but never stated. You knew you needed to bring a notebook and a pen or pad or paper, or even a laptop to take notes. But that was your responsibility and you had to bring them. And again, this is without anybody having to explain that. You also knew who a teacher or a professor was when they entered the classroom, and you knew exactly what they would do, where they would stand in relation to you, how they would interact, and you knew what would be in the classroom that they would use to interact with you or teach you. Most importantly, one of the most complicated behaviors in society is engaging in questions and answers in a classroom. Yet very few of us need to have that process explained to us. We know the moment we see a classroom, we enter it. We know what role we play, how to behave, what to do, and how to interact. How is this possible that we can walk into completely strange and new locations and know how to behave without thought, and know how other individuals we've never met before will behave, what they will do, and more importantly, what they will have and use, and what we're expected to have and use without saying a word? That's based on how our mind processes information at a subconscious level. And it's a specific kind of subconscious process or a specific kind of mental model or arrangement of information in the brain called a script. The scripts allow us to operate pretty much 90% of our lives on reflexive processes in a variety of complex spaces. They're the reason you can go into a classroom and not need to be continually reminded and instructed in how to behave, but can focus all of your conscious attention on listening to a lecture, on taking notes, on asking questions, rather than asking, where should I sit? How should I sit? How should I ask a question? The key factor is these scripts, these mental models are all designed in the same way, and every human being everywhere shapes them the same way, and they have the same parts. Whenever individuals study them, they begin by asking specific questions because scripts are driven by location, where something happens. And so the very first question to ask and the very first thing to determine is, where are you? Where is the location you are in? Because for every location we've been to, we have a script. And built into that script, we have expectations of who is there, who will interact with us, who will perform different activities, and most importantly, what we are expected to do in that location once we recognize where we are. We also know what each person in that space is expected to do. Once we know the location, we know who is there, what they are going to do, what they are going to have, what we are going to do, what we are going to have, and we know how to behave. We know how others will behave when they interact with us, and we know what objects others will have and how they will use them, as well as what we're expected to do. Now, this complex arrangement of thousands of pieces of information exist in your mind in one form, one continuous block or unit of information. And anytime we walk into a location and recognize it, we access it the same way a computer accesses a program and begins to run it automatically. Our mind accesses these complex patterns of behavior and runs them automatically the moment we know the location we're in, so we never even have to think about it. This is why we can walk into a classroom and know what to do without instruction. key to this entire process is we're born with a mechanism for making scripts, but we're not born with scripts themselves. They're based on experience over time. So for example, the more I go to a restaurant and see certain people using certain things and performing certain activities, I see it once, I see it twice, I see it again. Very quickly, my brain sees a pattern. It says every time you're in this location, expect these people to be there. These people will use these objects and do these things in that space. Turn this into a mental model that you place in your subconscious like a computer program, and that you can use to operate without thought the moment you know where you are. It's the same thing we learn as children entering a classroom for the first time. The first time we enter a classroom, we have no idea where we are or what to do, and we have to be told how to sit, how to position ourselves, and what to bring. Over time, the more we experience the same situation in the same space, are asked to do the same things, behave the same way, bring and use the same things in the same space, our mind says there's a pattern here. This is how we behave. This is how we interact. We have a mental model. This is a script. Turn all of this into one unit of information and place it in our subconscious. So every time we go into a classroom, we access the right program, the right script, and know how to behave without thought. The reason this is important is these scripts, all of this incredible processing your mind does, hundreds of thousands of pieces of information, is connected to space or location. I need to know where I am to know what script to access. The same way I need to know what kind of computer software my computer has to know what programs I can use. So location is everything. And for every location we've been to repeatedly, we build these scripts, these models that allow us to behave reflexively. Who is there, what they have, what they will do. What we are expected to do, how we are expected to behave, what we are expected to bring and use. We learn these so the moment we see the space, we access the correct script, if you will, access the correct program for how to behave, and our reflexes take over and we can do it without thinking. This is foundational that we operate every day for almost every activity in our lives. So if you understand these processes and you can map them out or determine what they involve, you can begin to manipulate them. And the importance of manipulating these processes is you can use them to introduce products for marketing purposes or for sales purposes into someone's daily routine by understanding their scripts and manipulating them in a certain way. The process is called script mapping, understanding these subconscious assumptions people have about a space. So it begins by asking, I want to study a specific behavior in a space. Where am I? What location am I in? The first thing I need to identify, because all scripts are connected to location. So where am I? What's really important is the moment I know where I am, I need to figure out how to identify that location. What has to be there for me to know I'm in the right space? To know I'm in a restaurant, I need to see tables and chairs. If I don't, I'm not going to identify the space. If I walk into a classroom, I've got to see desks organized a certain way and a chalkboard or whiteboard at the front of the classroom. If they are not there, I can't recognize the space. So when we study space, it's what visual features have to be in that location for individuals to recognize it and access the correct script. In some cases, it can be what are objects that are present. In the case of a restaurant, what makes a restaurant different from an office? It could be the presence of things like plates and bowls and silverware, knives, forks, spoons. Once I identify location, then I need to figure out the people I'm designing something for. Who do they expect to interact with in that environment? I need to know who they are. In the case of a restaurant, I need to know, will someone seat me at a table or not? Are wait staff there? If so, how are they dressed or what is their uniform to know who they are? And what is my role? What role do I play in that environment? I need to identify those factors. So it comes down to identifying these key variables, if you will. Who is there, but what will they do? What actions will they behave? And how will they do it? I need to know what behaviors are expected of specific individuals, because those are reflexive things. I don't question them. More importantly, if people act in a way I don't reflexively expect, I'll become confused, I'll become fearful, and in some cases, I'll become angry because it's forcing me to think consciously about something that I'm not accustomed to doing, and that causes problems. I also need to know what objects I expect them to have in use so I can assume what they will do. I know that a waiter will have a piece of paper and a pen, so if I ask them to write something down, I can assume they'll have those things. I know that the host or hostess at a restaurant will have the menus to provide them, so I don't need to bring those with me. All these assumptions for a space that are built in and part of the same model. Most important to all this is, what am I expected to do? What are my behavioral expectations? What do I do? I'm there. I'm a key part of this process. I play a role. What is it? What am I expected to do there? Because all the other people in that space have similar kinds of scripts for me as a customer and how they expect me to behave. If I behave differently, they'll become confused and problems will occur. I'm also expected to have certain things with me or bring them with me. In the case of restaurants, I'm expected to bring a form of payment and pay my bill at the end. There's that assumption that everyone in that setting brings to that script. If I don't address that assumption, there'll be confusion and in some cases hostility. So it's understanding all scripts are made up of these specific dynamics. If you can identify all of them, you can begin to modify them in such a way that allows you to insert new products into common daily routines that individuals rarely think about, in such a way that they start using your product without thought. It becomes a reflex for them. And this becomes the key to marketing. Understanding how to identify these items and how to change or manipulate them in such a way that you can have people use your product without thinking and market it very successfully. So let's talk about how companies often do that. The process is called a script fold. How do you introduce something new to a marketplace? You need to make it part of their daily lives or their daily routines. You need to find a specific script, a reflexive process they never think about, and make your product a reflexive or built-in part of that script. You fold it in or add it to their script so they expect it and use it without thinking. And that's where things become important in terms of understanding how scripts work. So we use this model that we looked at before, the idea that all scripts have these component parts, and we begin to figure out a process called contextualization. If I know these are the components of a script, I need to place my product into this framework somehow so it relates to one of the things there. It's part of the location people are in. It's part of the people who are there. It's something one of those people use or something I'm expected to use. I've got to very specifically fold it into or make it a part of that context so people expect it and they reflexively expect it and use it. And if it's not there, they'll become confused and want it to stabilize things or allow a reflex to keep working. So how do we study this process for contextualization? How does it work with, say, marketing and advertising? Let's say you want to sell a pharmaceutical product, a prescription drug to an audience. It's something they've never had before. They need to make it a part of their daily life. So it's got to be contextualized. It's got to be placed in some script that they have so they reflexively know how to use it and what to do with it. Now, for most individuals, when you say prescription drug, they think of a very specific script. A prescription drug is something you go to the hospital to get. You go to your physician's office, your doctor's office, a specific location that might look like this. In that location, you expect your doctor, your physician, to be the person who does all of the activity. They do all the work around this prescription drug that is needed. And what they do is they perform certain processes on you in that space. In the examining room, the doctor checks your blood pressure, checks your heart rate. They use different tools they're expected to have. And based upon how the doctor interacts with you in that space using these tools, they'll say you need a certain prescription. Now, what's interesting about that is you introduce the concept of prescription drug in the script for medical exam. That means when it's introduced that way and it's reinforced, every time you see it presented that way, you don't think of a prescription drug as something that's part of your daily life. it becomes something that's specialized, that exists for use in very particular situations, and requires a very, very specific pattern for you to get it. You must go to the hospital, have your doctor examine you. Your doctor will decide you need the drug. And you can only check information with the drug. You can only get access to it. You can only understand it in terms of interacting with your doctor at the hospital. But let's say I want to market my drug to as wide an audience as possible, and I want as many individuals as possible to want to buy my drug and make it part of their daily life, my prescription medication. How do I do that? I do that by manipulating or changing scripts. So instead of letting people associate prescription drug with a hospital, I want them to associate it with a different setting. I want them to associate it with their daily lives. Specifically, the first thing they should do when they get up in the morning and have breakfast is think, have I taken my prescription medication yet? I want them to associate it with daily life, particularly the very first thing I think about in the morning. To do that, I need to shift the focus of the doctor's the person in that setting who determines that the drug is used or how the drug is used. I'm not dependent on the doctor to associate with prescription drug. I associate that drug with it's my decision, and I will take the drug and use the drug in the morning when I have breakfast with my family. Now notice we've shifted the script. We've moved from the script for examining room, hospital, doctor, medical condition, medical situation, to everyday life, family environment. It's part of me being with my family, taking this prescription drug. By folding prescription drug use into this script for daily activity to start the morning with my family, I make it an essential part of that process to the point where I need to have it and use it at that point for my life to feel complete, because the script I use is completed that way. In this case, a doctor doesn't perform a process, but rather the things around me it's breakfast. I know that it will be part of my breakfast routine versus I need to be with someone who uses certain medical technologies to use it. Also, the traditional practice of the physician examines me and then decides I can have the drug, or then decides if I should have the drug. Most job ads, most prescription drug ads change this. How you access the drug is not physician does exam, prescribes drug. Rather, if you look at many ads, particularly in the United States, the idea is patient, the individual, calls or contacts their doctor and asks the doctor, can you please prescribe this drug to me? And they'll ask for it by name. And the physician says, okay, you've called me to ask for it. Here's how you get the drug. So suddenly, the way to access this item within the script you have for daily life changes. It's not a physician who makes a determination based upon your medical information and decides this prescription drug is right for you. You decide on your own, based upon your own feelings about how you are health-wise. You contact your doctor, ask your doctor to prescribe the drug, and they do. We've got a completely new script for how to administer prescription drugs. It's not doctor reviews patient, makes a decision. It's patient makes decision, contacts doctor, requests drug, gets prescription drug. So why this is important is we've created a completely new script for how we will add a prescription drug to our lifestyle. It's something we will take in the morning when we get up for breakfast, when we're with our family, and it'll be part of the food that we see on the breakfast table every day. It's no longer a medical product. It's no longer part of the script of medical exam. It's now an everyday breakfast product. It's part of our routine for getting up in the morning and being with our family. By shaping how this script is formed for a new product, by folding it into one kind of script versus another, advertising companies make it a reflexive part of a psychological process associated with an everyday activity and associated with the patient asking for the product versus being dependent on the physician to provide it. So how do we research these things in advertising? How do we research prescription drug ads to figure out how are advertising companies using scripts to sell their product or to make their product part of daily life? The process works kind of like this. We begin by asking, whenever you see an advertisement like a television ad, what location is used? What location appears on the screen as the context or the setting for the script? Use prescription drugs. Is it a hospital, a healthcare context, a pharmacy, a doctor's office? Or is it someone's breakfast table, someone's kitchen, a party at someone's house, a backyard gathering? Whenever the drug is advertised, what location is the manufacturer saying the product is used in this setting? By presenting that location, they're creating the script. We said scripts are connected to place. Here's the place where prescription drugs are used and thought about. It's in this setting, the setting you see at the very start of an advertisement. Once we have the setting, what's in the location, we now need to look at some other details. Who is in that setting? Whenever the commercial starts, who is in the location that will be the person using the drug, or who is an essential part of either why we take the drug or how we use the drug? In many cases, advertising doesn't focus on going to a medical office and talking with your physician. If you look at it, it tends to focus on family. The first persons shown in most advertising are, here is the individual who's the patient who would take the prescription medication. Here they are with their family and friends. So the drug becomes an essential part of the script, the visual association for the space of breakfast table, for the space of family gathering, for the space of party with friends, and here's who's around. Again, the advertising company is building a script to prompt a reflexive behavior. Something else to look at in this process is not just what is presented on the screen, but prescription drugs are often mentioned during a commercial, during an advertisement, and they're not mentioned at random times. They're mentioned at very specific points in a commercial. And this is what we want to look at. So when is the product mentioned in an advertisement? It's not random. So we begin to study, the product gets mentioned 3, 4, 5 times in a commercial. When? When is the first time it's mentioned? Is it mentioned at the start of the advertisement? Is it mentioned by name in the middle of the advertisement? And is it mentioned by name at the end of the advertisement? Again, specifically mentioned by name. And what you're looking for is every time the company mentions the name of the drug in the advertisement, what's the scene? What's the setting? What's the physical space that they're presenting the moment they mention the drug? And who is in that location whenever they mention the drug? So if we begin the commercial by saying, use Prilosec for this condition, and it begins with a breakfast table, so we need to make sure that who is there, what is in that location. It begins with the kitchen, we see breakfast, we want to know who is there. It's the patient or the person who would ask for the drug and their family. The company is building a script that says, this product, this new thing needs to become part of your breakfast routine, become part of your daily life from the very beginning, so that you can be with your family. It's an essential part of you being together with your family, the same way the food at the table that you're all eating together is an essential part of being together as well. It's creating a script association so prescription drug becomes part of breakfast. It's a natural logical extension. So when you're talking about when the product is mentioned is one thing you map or track. The next thing to look for is in the course of most advertising, at least once the advertiser will mention how you obtain the product. Okay, I'm very interested in this this prescription drug. How do I get it? And you'll notice most American advertising will say, to get a prescription to, or in order to find out more about, contact your doctor. So they're going to at some point directly tell the person watching the advertisement how to get the product, how to request their product, how to obtain it, who to ask to get it. And you want to look very specifically at the 1 or 2 times, and it's relatively few, but the 1 or 2 times they tell the viewer how to obtain the product, what is in that location and who is there. That's going to be a very important, a very important overlap. What is there and who is there? Because again, you're building a script for how to request a product, to make it part of your life. So again, if the moment they say, To obtain a prescription to Prilosec, contact your physician, and they show a parent with children at a breakfast table. They've just created the impression, the idea that you need to do this in this way at this point in time right now in order to keep living life in this way, in order to keep maintaining this event where you're with your family doing these things. So those become key things to look at. Where are things mentioned? Who is there and how? Because again, a company is building a script to teach you how to request their product and use their product in a way that makes it part of your daily life. So for the project that you'll be doing that looks at different kinds of advertising, there's prescription drugs, which requires a doctor to give you permission to get them. And there are non-prescription drugs, things you can get whenever you want to, something like aspirin or ibuprofen or medicine for headaches versus an antidepressant or an antihistamine. So when comparing those kinds of advertisement, you're going to look at, first of all, what location is used. When the ad starts, where are you? Where is it set? Is it in someone's home? Is it in a pharmacy? Is it in a hospital? Is it during a party somewhere? So where does this take place? If it changes from location to location during the ad, you want to find each location. Where does it move to? What different spaces? And each space that appears in an ad, it begins in a kitchen. It moves to a parent taking their child to school. It ends with a parent going grocery shopping. Who is in each of those locations? Is the patient shown just by themselves doing something? Are they shown taking care of children? Are they shown interacting with friends? Who is there in that space every time the product is mentioned? So you're looking for general trends, general information. Where is it set and who is there? Once you've got the general trend, everything takes place in a pharmacy. Everything takes place in the patient's kitchen. Everything takes place during a yard party. Then you go back and you review it again to figure out within this script, within this advertisement, when is the product mentioned by name? And what you want to do specifically is pause the video when the product is mentioned and look at where it's set. Is it still in the person's kitchen? Is it at the point where the person is dropping their child off at school? Is it whenever the person is talking with friends at a party? But where specifically is the product mentioned, the prescription drug or non-prescription drug, and who is there? Because this is how the company is building associations it wants individuals to use to think about their product. It's part of my daily life so I can take my kids to school like I did every day. It's part of my daily life so I can have meals with my family. It's part of my being a part of a community and having friends over to a party in my backyard. Or it's just a regular part of shopping where I go to the pharmacy and ask a pharmacist and get it. It's not that essential of an item, but it's looking at these dynamics. The product is not mentioned randomly, and what appears when it is mentioned is not by chance. It's done purposefully to create these scripts. And then the other time you want to pause the video and look at specific factors are whenever someone tells you how to get the product. To get ibuprofen, go to your local pharmacist. To get a prescription to Prilosec, ask your physician about. The moment that those words appear, usually it's just once, but it could be twice in an advertisement. Very quickly, what is the setting the moment that information appears? What setting is shown on the screen? Who is in that space? Again, you're trying to figure out how a company is shaping scripts to encourage people to use its product as part of their daily lives. So this becomes the specific information you look for when you analyze an advertisement. So just to sum up, understanding this whole process of script folding, researching it, how companies try to make a product part of the daily lives of consumers is understanding the general location that they want consumers to associate their product with. Where are they? Who is there that they're interacting with, to figure out how they're going to make it part of their daily life or part of their lifestyle or life routine. We also need to figure out the very specific associations companies are trying to get people to draw to contextualize how their product will fit into the person's life. This is where we want to look at specifically when the product is mentioned, what kind of information is presented visually, as well as whenever a company says, this is how you get our product, what specific imagery is used to create an association for the product is essential and you have to get it in this way to continue with this life process or these life activities. So that in summary is what scripts are, how an understanding of them can be used for marketing purposes, and how they're studied both to enhance marketing programs as well as to understand marketing processes and products in previous examples. At this time, are there any questions about anything that I've discussed so far?